And hello, Simon. Hello, Emma. Um, so we don't have sort of Q&A. We're going to hopefully chat, and it should feel fairly natural as we flow through discussion. But I'll kick off with introductions. So as Cara said, I'm Jonathan Cooper. I'm now at UCL Advanced Research Computing Centre, where I have the very grandiose sounding title of Director of Collaborations. Used to be head of RSE until we didn't have just RSEs anymore, and that title didn't really work. But I got there kind of a roundabout sort of route. I generally describe it as I did all the wrong things to be an academic, and then suddenly I discovered that actually they were really good for leading a group of RSEs, which didn't exist when I started my career, which goes to show that you never quite know where life is going to take you, I guess. So I spent far too long in the same place. I was at Oxford for many years as an undergraduate and then a researcher in sort of computational physiology, developing software for simulating the heart, dabbling in various different sorts of projects, some more sensible than others. But staying in the same place, always focused on developing the software, supporting the research, and even got told by the head of computer science that I was doing great applications of computer science research, but it wasn't computer science research, so I didn't deserve a lectureship. But for being a research software engineer, which then came along, worked out really well, and moved to UCL when Chiltern Railways very kindly built a new train station a few minutes cycle ride from my house, and actually got my first permanent job nearly 10 years ago now. Gosh, it's been 10 years at UCL. First as a research software engineer and then leading research software engineers. At first, I said I never wanted to lead the group. I wanted to be able to focus on actually doing the technical work. James Hetherington left, and my arm was twisted into leading the group on an interim basis while we tried to recruit someone better. And then they told me I was actually quite good at it, and I discovered I actually quite enjoyed it. And I've never managed to leave. So that's me. Emma, do you want to talk about what brings you here?
Thanks, Jonathan. Hi, everybody. Sorry I can't be there in person. I have a lot of FOMO of joining online, but I've had a really great day listening to all the community talk, which is what my thing is. So hi, I'm Emma. I am currently working at the Alan Turing Institute as a principal investigator, but also, as you've probably heard about today, I am working with Cass, Malvika, and others building up the RCM cooperative, which is like our new initiative. I've also had a very, I call it a squiggly career, where I've kind of done lots of different things. So I actually started at UCL, so very much along the lines where Jonathan is, where I was an archaeological scientist and I did a PhD there in archaeobotany. And then I did a bit of postdoc work there, but actually then went off to do some science teaching and in high schools for a few years, quite a few years actually. I got a bit stuck there. Then I came back into academia, really to focus on open research and data science, starting off again in archaeology, but then expanding off into other domains. And this is where I sort of have been for the last like 5 years, working at the Turing in tools, practices and systems program, on the Turing Way, on lots of other health focused AI and data science research projects. But really what I've been doing is working at this interface of research and also the kind of supporting the research technical professional area, developing communities around research projects. And I'm currently now at Turing leading a couple of research projects, which are really meta science projects about data science roles and career pathways, focused on biomedical research. We're doing things like mapping competency frameworks and also qualitative studies on these roles and skills. And I think that's it. I've jabbered on for too much. So over to Simon.
Okay, thank you, Emma. So I'm Simon Hetrick. I'm Director of Strategy at the SSI. So I too have a grandiose title. So I think that's my first tip. If you want to get ahead in academia and not in a traditional academic role, just call yourself Director of something. Nobody checks. So that's fine. So I run an RSE group in Southampton. So I ran the campaign at first to get RSE recognised, right up until into 2018 when I finally left the society, because I kind of worried a little bit that I was becoming that sort of dinosaur in the room that was saying, well, we've tried that and it didn't work. So I wanted to move on from that. And the way I moved on was I took the thing that I really cared about with the RSE campaign, which was recognition for people who are vital but unrecognized in research. And I turned that into a new campaign. And, software engineering is obviously deeply like something that everybody gets passionate about and you can really easily get a campaign behind. So I thought, what can I do next that would have a similar level of impact? And I went, brilliant, the REF, the UK's National Research Assessment Programme. People could get behind that. It'll be very, very exciting indeed. So I set up a thing called the Hidden Ref, and that's where I do a lot of my work now, trying to change the way that universities recognize what success looks like in research. But that's probably enough about me. I think Emma's got the first question.
I've got the first question. Yeah, thanks, Simon. So our first question is what do we mean by roles in research software? So I know that we have lots of words around this. So we've already talked about research technical or mentioned research technical professionals. So these digital research technical professionals or technology professionals. So what are these roles within research software? Who's going first, Simon or Jonathan?
Oh,
take your pick.
Okay.
I mean, the RSE community has always defined itself very broadly. If you think you're an RSE, then that's fine. We agree. If you don't think you're an RSE, you probably are. You just don't realize it yet.
Simon.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole range of different roles involved, and I guess you've seen that a lot with the Hidden Ref, that you're actually broadening that out as well.
So I'm really resistant to ever putting boundaries on anything, because the RSE came about because somebody had put boundaries on career positions and said that we weren't in it. So I kind of always wanted to resist. Everybody wanted to define what a research software engineer was, and I was always like, no, we're not going to do that. People define it themselves. They're in if they want to be in. But the interesting thing I found was the way that evolved into the RTP, so research technical professional, and then into digital RTP. And the way then we've seen like other groups like technicians and data stewards and lived experience contributors coming in. So around like research software, I think the focus obviously is on the people doing the digital roles and the RSEs, but there's actually a huge number of other roles that make our work like possible. I mean, I've just come out of a discussion around community management, and obviously community managers are in there. Otherwise, lots of things that happen today wouldn't be working. So I think it's a really broad range of different roles. And what I want to do actually is to move us away from constantly coming back and talking about who's in and who's out. I want it just to be a spectrum of roles that you can have in any project, whether it's a research software one or not.
Yeah, it's the same thing we've done with the discourse project that I'm leading. And there's a whole long list of example job titles for what we might class as a digital research technical professional, which is what UKRI used as the term for the funding call. But actually, if you're doing anything in this kind of space, it counts. And there's a whole lot of things that, even if you're not directly engaging with the research software itself, roles can equally be important for building that ecosystem and the community and supporting that. And so people have many different ways in which they describe themselves, and that's great.
What do you think, Emma?
Well, yeah, I totally agree with both of you. I tend to say that really it's people who are working in research software or working in data science rather than saying the specific role, because usually the roles are defined in lots of different ways. So I think the actual terms of the roles is quite unhelpful in this space. So I agree, we need to be really inclusive and think about all these people who are doing research, enabling research, and make sure that they're not excluded in any way.
It's easy when we all agree with each other, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so we need something we can disagree on, right? And on the next one, I think sometimes we've ended up on the opposite sides of the debate. So let's see how this goes. So what do we mean by professionalizing? And that is something that I've had various arguments about over the years. But do you want to take this first?
Yeah, and I think there have been discussions around, well, does that mean we need sort of accreditation to professional standards? Or is that more about kind of professional ethics and how we approach the role? And I think probably within the audience and even within the group of us here, there are different emphases that we might put on that question. I very much go more on the professional standards and actually coming at the work that we do with we're not comfortable just hacking something to get the job done, although there may be cases where actually you do need to meet a deadline, you need to do that. But actually the way in which we work is as important as the work that we're doing, how we approach it, the fact that we do consider ourselves as professionals. We have a certain degree of expertise in the work that we're doing. We want to do it to a high standard. Quality matters. That's kind of what I think about as professionalization. But that's probably not what the BCS thinks about in terms of professionalization.
Yeah, I'll come in. So yeah, I think some people do need accreditation. So I do think for some of these, I'm going to go back to roles like this with little quotation marks. Some roles they do want it. I know that the NHS has now put an emphasis on accreditation for their actual data roles, like data analysts and data engineers. They want to move them to accreditation. But that doesn't suit everybody. And sorry, I've just lost you. No, it's all gone. I can see you again now. That's good. So it's not, so it's good for some people, but it's not great for other people who maybe can't get the accreditation. Because like people who, I would say myself in this squiggly career type thing, we don't always fit in the box for accreditation. And so we don't want that to exclude people. So I tend to say that what we really need for professionalization is to understand, like you're saying, Jonathan, understand the roles, understand the skills. So I very much advocate for the competency framework approach, where we can actually document the skills that are needed in that space, so that people can understand and have clarity on that in terms of their own career progression. So they know sort of the skills that they would need to do certain things within this space. And so I think that's kind of the first step in a way to moving towards professionalization. So understanding the knowledge, skills, and behavior within those types of roles.
Mm.
So I always worry when accreditation comes up because, and it's not that I'm against having a professional standard. Certainly, I think work should be conducted with a professional standard, and there should be a good understanding of what that looks like in different projects. But whenever it comes to accreditation, and you've got a community that is, we are accepted now in academia, but we're accepted, like grudgingly accepted in some places and not at all accepted in others. So we're still quite a nascent community, regardless of the fact that we are celebrating our 15-year anniversary next year.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as you start applying any additional pressures on these people, so if you want accreditation, then that's a lot of extra work in your own time. It's it's having the right courses, and you really don't want accreditation that is like some of the fellowships you can get, where you sort of look at them and you see that it's not like I'm not talking about our fellowship, by the way. I'm talking about this is like learned society ones, where you're basically just jumping through hoops and showing that you're willing to put enough words down on a piece of paper to show you want something, right? If you want a true accreditation that's going to separate people who are really good at the job from people who maybe need some more help to get better at the job, then that's a huge undertaking for the people in this community. And I just think we've got enough problems as it stands. So I'm quite against accreditation and always have been, but I've often found myself on the wrong side of the debate there. So I'm still banging on about it now.
Yeah.
But I do think the professional standards thing is a really important thing. So one of the things we're trying to do in my RSE group in Southampton is to try and bring more standards in, especially from industry, because we have some industry RSEs nowadays, but refine them to the point where they're applicable in research. Because the one thing I find with professional standards is we want them. The researchers we work for often aren't willing to pay for the time it takes to do work at that quality level.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of leads on to what does success look like in this area in terms of getting the recognition for the value of these kind of professional standards from the researchers, in terms of professionalization of roles. What are we aiming towards, and how do we know we've succeeded in this area?
I could take a first pop of that one, I guess. So I've got a really simple way of defining that, and that's just I want to be able to anybody who works in a research position in a university who gets some grant money and is successful in that way can go, okay, well I want I need obviously I'll need some postdocs, and I want an RSC and a data steward and as a community manager, then they just cost those all into their grant, and there's no sort of challenge to that. And every single person who comes into those positions has an understandable career progression path with metrics that will progress their career that are achievable for them. So we're not asking them to write papers, we're not asking them to bring in research funding maybe, but we're asking them to do work that's related to their work. That's my my view of the utopian academic society.
Excellent. Emma?
Yeah, I totally agree with Simon. I think it's about this recognition, isn't it? The recognition of the work that people are doing, their actual work, and not having to conform to the metrics of academia that we have at the moment. So, like a software engineer, it being equal value that they've produced their software compared to a research paper, and a community manager setting up a community and managing it is equal to that academic paper. So not having to kind of fit people into the current system, which is what, to get their career progressed, which is what is essentially happening at the moment. I mean, I am a big advocate for writing things like data papers, because I think that actually you get a lot of more findability, accessibility for data sets that way. But it is a way of getting credit now for doing the work of like a data steward, but we shouldn't have to do it. We shouldn't have to be writing these papers to get credit for our work. We should just be able to manage and deposit fair data sets and that be the product that everyone values. But it just isn't the case at the moment. So I think it's this like the equal recognition of all of our work as part of research. That's what success to me really seems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sort of emphasizing different aspects. I guess in your utopia, in one of the challenges that I often hear about is how do you actually get a project that's big enough to have all of those sort of roles within it, and how do you then sustain those careers for people as well? Because if you're having sort of expertise from multiple different people involved in a project, which actually a lot of projects need because research increasingly is interdisciplinary, you're recognizing that a lot of different skill sets are involved and you can't have the one unicorn that does everything. Well, you need to have the people there who you can actually get 20-50% of their time, not have a load of part-time researchers. Research is kind of predicated on you can hire the postdoc. That's the budget that you've got. Therefore, that's what you have to do. So, I mean, that's one of the things that discourse is particularly looking at. How do you organize the group structures and the career pathways to ensure that all of these people can have jobs within the sector and actually long-term sustainable jobs with a career pathway, so that you can then deploy them to work on different projects. They can contribute as part of research teams, and sort of success in a sense there is looking at how many different models can we come up with of making this work within different areas, which is a lot of the discourse pilot project work is trying to, can we trial this and get it to work somewhere, or at least sort of showcase, they've done this good idea over here. Let's see if we can get someone else copying that, and showcasing things that have been successful.
Maybe that's a good shortcut, really. I want people to have jobs. That's basically what I want. Yeah. So people have jobs and they can do those jobs, and they're obviously really useful things because they're needed, and they can continue to progress their career. Sometimes it's easiest if you just go simple. I agree with that approach.
I think it's me for that. We're ready for the next question.
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so our next question, we've touched on this a little bit, I think, is how do we actually recognize everyone involved in research?
Yeah, so you were talking about data papers and sort of fitting in with the kind of existing system for how we recognize people. And there's a certain aspect of that with a worldwide academic system takes a lot of time to make change. So how can we subvert the system that's there and use that to recognize what other people are doing? And I guess Hidden Ref is very much answering this sort of question.
I certainly talk about Hidden Ref. So some of you will have seen me talk about Hidden Ref, so I'll try not to, and I just go into my normal, this is the presentation I do mode. But the thing, when we were looking to run a campaign to get recognition for everybody in research, all of the people who are doing vital work, I came across a ref because I thought it was a brilliant way of it's a brilliant foil for a campaign. But I didn't know anything about it because I'd not been refable. So this big thing was happening every 7 years. It was really important to the university, but I was never I was one of the many people who were deemed as unimportant for the ref. So I didn't know anything about it. And I looked into it and I found that in the previous ref, they'd submitted 186,000 research outputs and only 11 of them had been software. And that was just mind blowing. Like you just think, well, the data must be wrong. I must be doing something wrong here. No, 69% of that research is fundamentally reliant on software and 11 outputs. So I really wanted to do something to change the way that works. But the issues for recognizing everybody are very difficult. I do think we need to subvert the system first of all. We can't just throw out. Well, it's not. Publications are really important. I'm never gonna not say that. Publications are very important to the conduct of research and the contract we enter with taxpayers when they fund all of this work. But they shouldn't be the only metric of research success. So if I'm to get off my soapbox, because I could be here for hours, literally, I think the main thing that I want to do is just to have publications as not the only metric of research success, and we look at what people are doing, how they're contributing to that research, and we build a system on the back of that. And I can't believe I'm saying that. It's so blindingly obvious. But that's the system I would like to see.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to add to that, really. I think it's about or getting change for people's recognition, these recognizing the more variety of things that we're producing and the variety of work we're doing. I'm focusing at the moment on building evidence and showing where these barriers are. So the project I'm doing at Turing is we're doing a large qualitative study where we're interviewing people who work in biomedical data science, and we're hearing all the things which we talk to each other about, all these anecdotal things that have come up. So we've interviewed someone who has been a data steward for 20 years, but has been told because they don't have a PhD, they can't then progress to the next level, being a group leader or director of an institute because they just don't have a PhD, even though they have all the skills, they lead teams, they lead projects, but no, they haven't got a PhD, can't. So it's like these barriers are just still there all over the place. We're hearing similar things with like early career researchers where they've worked in more technical roles. So they've come out of their sort of PhD, gone into a technical role rather than doing like a postdoc academic role. And then they're being told at their institute that, well, no, you can't be a group leader because you haven't published XYZ number of papers. And, so these things are happening, and we've got to make people kind of catch up. So I've also been supporting the hidden ref as well, because I think it's really important that the ref is about money for universities, and it's a way of kind of saying we can change this. It can still be positive for you and bring you in money. This is what we should be doing.
I guess maybe being slightly controversial if you're thinking about it in terms of ref and outputs. And yeah, I'd agree, you don't want just publications to be the only sort of research output. But even if you're then considering data sets and software as well as equally valuable research outputs, you maybe you're still focused on that. What are the outputs of research question as being the primary thing people are concerned about? Actually, a lot of contributions to research might be a bit more behind the scenes or enabling things to happen. And it's very hard for some roles to say, well, actually, I produce an output here. Maybe what I do is mainly enabling other people to produce the outputs. And you still want to recognize that kind of role and that kind of contribution and actually have career pathways for those people to follow as well. So I think that's one of the challenges in designing career pathways in research generally, but for research technical professionals in particular, is what kind of metrics do you assess people on and enabling them to progress up the levels in the same way as academics do, building their expertise and actually having that recognized within institutions. We were just talking about that in the mini workshop I was doing in here before on career pathways in research, that there are lots of different things you want to recognize and allow progression on the basis of, not just outputs, even if it is all kinds of output. Not there's anything wrong with your idea.
I think it's really interesting those days. So Malvika was talking about like hidden infrastructure earlier on, and it was really going through my mind, like why is it hidden? Because it's supporting all the work that everybody's doing, and it's completely overlooked because it's doing its job. It's not getting in the way, and there are a lot of roles that do that kind of make that kind of contribution as well. So you might have a superstar data steward or RSE who comes in and revolutionizes your research, and and they can carry that as an individual, but you'll have lots of other roles who are just getting along with their work and supporting you. So understanding how to do that, I think, is absolutely key. I think the problem we have is, well, the best way of doing it would be to sit down with every single person in your organization I spend half a day just talking through what they do and really understanding what their contribution is. But obviously, that's not a practical solution. So we need these shortcuts and the heuristics that indicate success. So I do think that those need to change, and we need to look at new shortcuts and heuristics for it. But I think support looking at, and that doesn't just mean looking at the superstars. It means looking at the sort of foundational work as well. Without all of it, we can't do research.
Yeah, I totally support that. That's very much my area, this enabling other people. And I'm sort of by background an open researcher. So I think if you are adopting open research practices, people can see what you're doing more, even though you might think of it's hidden, but you can make it more visible. So I would really advocate for people making their work more visible that are doing these enabling roles. So it's about it is producing outputs. So if you're running things like workshops, you can write workshop summaries and things like that. You can put out outputs. You're probably not going to write tons of papers, but you're going to have things to show people, to write in reports. Our workshop just before this was about community health metrics. So there are loads of metrics you can actually gather as a community manager to kind of report on, like work you do in social media, events, data and things like that. So it's just about having something to show people. You can interview people and get their feedback on things you're doing. So there is something to show people. So I would definitely advocate for producing outputs or producing something to show people, so to make yourself more visible.
So I've just been seen a 10-minute flag being waved at me. So I should ask the next question, shouldn't I? So the next question is, what's been your biggest success so far, and how did it come about? Who wants to go first on that one? Emma?
Oh my goodness. So
It's a hard question, even when we knew it was coming.
Yeah, it is. So I have kind of been thinking about it, and and I think success, it just means different things to different people. And when I've sort of been thinking about it, because obviously we have been preparing for this, so this is the question I got a bit stuck on. So I've really been thinking about it the last couple of days, and I wanted to sort of go back to emergent strategy, which is something we have been using in the Turing way. I think people might be familiar of it. And one of the core principles is small is good, small is all. The large is a reflection of the small. And I think this is really appropriate, because what we're trying to do here with professionalizing these roles is we're trying to make quite a large systemic change. But actually, all of our small actions that we're all doing, like all just being here and talking about this is one of our actions. Those are successes, and we should take them as being big successes. So an example of something that I feel a real success myself about is like mentoring other people. And we did build up the community management team at Turing, Malvika, Cass, other people. And I feel like that's been a real success. And I've actually been talking to former members of the Turing team in the last couple of weeks and seeing them and now working as community managers in other spaces. And to me, I think that is a real success, because we've built something, we've done a lot of mentoring in the Turing way and the Turing RCM team, and just seeing people going out. I like to imagine the kind of dandelions, when you blow a dandelion and all the seedlings kind of like go off into the ecosystem. So I feel like that's kind of happening at the moment, and that's a real success.
That's great. I think for me, there's possibly two things that I would highlight, and given we are being recorded, I'll need to be careful not to mention names. One of those. So one is very much getting a career pathways framework and a promotions process to work at UCL Arc, which was a work of several years. In that the first time I sort of put the case together and was trying to kind of put why it was both valuable to the organization and why the RSE group that we had at the time was effectively in the same kind of situation as the researchers. And we might be working on slightly different metrics, but in terms of value we brought to the organization, and in terms of also the fact that doing a promotion pathway didn't cost the university anything in inverted commas, because I mean, researchers, when they get promoted because they're doing more impactful research, they're bringing in more research funding, they effectively pay for themselves. While RSEs do the same thing. A senior RSE works more effectively, brings in bigger grants, can help write grant proposals and so on. So effectively, you pay for yourselves as you go up the ladder. That didn't get anywhere the first few attempts, until we got a new CIO who also wanted this within the wider IT services, central IT organization. And we were spinning out ARC as its own department as well. And we were able to pilot, and those same kind of arguments with more people behind them, actually making those arguments to the university to say that, look, we can promote staff, that the benefits you get in terms of recruitment and retention and giving these people a trajectory for their careers rather than losing them every few years, it pays for itself, and it provides a lot of benefit in terms of reputation, in terms of the impact of the work that we can do. And that was piloted and is now business as usual, which I think is a great win. Definitely not me, in some senses, not at all me, because I made the argument and it failed, and someone else came in and made the same argument and it succeeded. That's fine by me. We got there in the end. But being able to show actually we've done it once, and other institutions are doing it or have done it in different sort of situations. So this is not something that's impossible anymore, which it felt like it was impossible for quite a few years. And so hopefully others can copy and benefit from that. And then similarly, try again. We've tried a few times, and Simon was involved in some of those, to put in a grant proposal for sort of building up, working towards RSE career pathways, that kind of idea, an RSE network. Discourse was finally funded. It was the third time that I'd led a very similar kind of grant proposal to a different scheme and try and shoehorn the ideas in. And this one succeeded. And so now we've got funding to work on how do you build leadership in this RTP space? How do you build career pathways for RSEs at institutions? And we've got the funding, and we can actually give it out to you guys as well. So if you have a good idea, come talk to me. You can hopefully facilitate that working.
So what you're saying is basically we tried for quite a long time to get that thing off the ground, and as soon as I dropped off the bid, it succeeded. That's good. It's good to know. But it's always difficult to answer this question, because you kind of wonder, well, what's the greatest success, and like that I've achieved all by myself with no support from anybody, right? No, you can't answer that. Obviously, it's always part of a group effort. But I think the biggest thing that we achieved, I feel, and certainly the happiest I've been in my professional life, was the first RSE Con. So that was 2016, and we started it with £5,000 per year for this conference. And I'd gone in the morning to sort of meet the people at the venue, and they'd said the last payment hasn't gone through from the university. You owe us £15,000, and I was contemplating having to put that on my personal credit card. But fortunately, managed to get somebody in finance who had turned up at 9 o'clock in the morning, which is rare at the University of Southampton. Anyways, that got sorted out, and I got to do the opening presentation, and I stood up, and there was 223 RSEs, or people who identified with RSEs, and I just, that was immensely rewarding, thinking, well, this thing could actually, maybe it'll work, maybe we'll actually make some changes here. And so much good came from that. And I think that model of a bunch of people sort of being annoyed by a problem in the world and then working together to fix it, and was, that's certainly, that's the happiest I've been in my professional career so far. The other impactful time that change happened was when we actually managed to get change through to the ref, and that will allow anybody who contributes to research to be included in the ref, rather than it just being people on academic contracts. And that felt like a real successor to the work with RSE. But it happened in a weird way. Like for RSE, we felt like we'd been fighting for years for it. And with the change to hidden ref, they just announced it and they didn't even tell us. So it was like, saw it on Twitter, I was like, oh, that's brilliant. So those are my two.
Great stuff. So I think we have time for some questions from the audience. And Oscar, comparing, excellent. Mm-hmm.
Here, everyone can hear me? Yeah. So I think there are a few questions from the audience, and the first and the second one I think they're about sort of, when I hear professionalizing, I worry that means removing any fun elements. I think it maybe, but it maybe talks to some worry about people about professionalizing. Oh, now suddenly I'm an RSE and I like to do what I do. And now my manager's going to tell me I need to publish and I need to get publications and I need to have all these outputs. Maybe something like that talks to it. But also, you know, maybe how do we professionalize without removing the fun parts of RSE? If you can respond to that.
Guess it speaks to what you were saying about certification is perhaps not the right route. And that's a very different thing from professionalizing.
So I think I mean, when we're looking at the sort of professional standards that we want our RSEs to meet, I mean, we've been fairly open in the way that happens, because you're drawing on people from usually not software engineering backgrounds that have sort of learned them skills themselves. You've got lots of different levels of like competence and different tools and all manner of things. So the last thing I want to do is try and bring in a framework that everybody has to meet. You're only 95% good at this, and that's not good enough. So I think you've got to maintain that flexibility, because there's precious few reasons for working in academia, right? It's not the pay, it's not the security. So it's got to be the fun of the role, right? And then the joy of working in a project where you're discovering things. So I think it's about looking at the standards you want and applying them in a flexible way that has keeping the fun of the job as at its heart, because that's one of the main reasons you do the job.
Yes, I could also say, Erin, is one of the things we tend to hire for is actually the ability to learn. One of the things we say is that the range of projects you get to do in a central group is huge. So any project you do, you're not going to know everything you need to know for this. You're going to have to learn something. And if you don't enjoy that learning process and constantly developing and improving your skills, this is probably not the right career for you. And I think I would say the same sort of thing to that professionalizing, that actually you want to be learning how to do your job better all the time, and hopefully getting some element of fun out of that. And I found a better way of doing this. Great, I can improve how I'm working. And that's not taking the fun out of the job. That's getting better at your job and being more professional in how you do it.
Well, what do you think, Emma?
Yeah, I think, I can see what people mean by that. I mean, I would just say that the defining particularly roles is very difficult. We have to do it for like creating job descriptions and things like that. But often when you get in those roles, because they're, you have to get into a role first, obviously, so you have to try and meet as much of that criteria. When you get in there, you often do loads of different things, don't you? And you often have the flexibility to do other things. So yeah, I suppose it can be seen as a bit of a barrier, the sort of accreditation side of it. But yeah, I don't know. We have to align somewhere with HR, don't we? And to get these job descriptions approved and things like that. If you're lucky, you get to write your own job descriptions. That's always the best luxury, isn't it? And then you can kind of make your own thing.
That does bring on the question, could we live without HR?
Probably.
I'm not going there.
I could do that one too. No.
Yeah, the next question I think relates to the title of the Fireside chat, which is professionalizing roles and strengthening recognition in research software. And the question is, will professionalization solve the recognition issue?
Who wants to go first on that? I have speculations, but only speculations.
I'll go for that. Okay. What are you speculating?
Oh, what am I speculating? All right, okay. So I don't think it will. I think it could be an important step, right? So it's an important step because you can then say to the people. So actually, now I'll take a step back. My worry about the way that recognition is going within universities is that we thought it was all about like impressing the top brass and the funders, that RSEs and these other roles should exist. Then we went and did it, and nowadays you'll get a pat on the head from most VCs, and they'll say, "I think this is a good thing. I endorse this message," right? But change happens in that middle management layer that hangs the land below them. And these are the people who have the role in universities of taking these like aspirations from the top brass and turning them into real policy on the ground, right? And there's a massive problem to do that because it's often not compatible with the way that university policies are written. So changing that around, I think, is difficult, but it would be a useful tool in the sort of in your toolbox to be able to say, well, these people have this level of professional standards and they can do work at this level. I think I was joking about HR, but I think HR gets that kind of argument. You know, this is this role and they can do it at this level, so therefore they must be at this level on the pay scale or whatever. So I think it will help, but it's not enough. It's definitely not enough.
No,
Right.
and it
Could I
doesn't
just
help. Sorry, Emma, go on.
Sorry, yeah, could I just add to that? I do agree with Simon that there is this issue of, I think it's a broad understanding of these roles, like within the whole of academia, because you're right, it's this middle management, but it's also like people who are writing grants, like they're the people that are essentially going to employ people. So are they writing the grants to include the right people? And actually what we're finding at the moment is probably not, because we've unlocked the ability for research technical professionals, other people, well, research, anyone really working in research to be a PI, be co-leads on grants. You know, it's supported at that kind of level, but we're not actually seeing enough of that coming through still. We're not seeing, like I think Simon was saying earlier, projects being set up with the different professionals in them. So, you know, why is that happening? Is it an understanding generally and a valuing of these professionals in the ecosystem? And I think that's one of the sides of it. The other, I think, is to do with the grants are not big enough, like you say, to encompass all these different people that you might need, or the skills you might need to actually do the jobs within the teams. So yeah, understanding for me at that sort of middle like academic leadership area is, I think, an important step.
Yeah, that was going to be my point as well. You need the
Oh,
recognition
sorry.
from the researchers and the people writing the grants, not just HR.
Yeah.
But do you find so when people know there's an RSC or a community manager or a data steward that they can bring onto their grant, and there is money in the, assuming we can get beyond there's not enough money in the bid, right? I've found that people are largely like happy, they're like, oh, excellent, well, I can take a professional person on to do the software rather than having to persuade a PhD student to learn how to code. Like they're usually pretty happy about that, and we found that recently with community managers at my university, that people are keen to have them on their projects if they can see them fulfilling a role in that grant. So I don't think there's a lack of will there. I think it's more there's just a lack of opportunity because those people don't exist, and the people who are writing the grants don't know about them.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing, Simon. You're advocating for them. You know about these different roles. So not at all these institutions that are writing grants, that isn't the case. Like, it definitely isn't. I have people who approach me to write grants and they're like, well, I just need something about community in the grant. I'm like, okay, so what do you actually mean by that? Do you mean like you want me to come in and lead the community, or do you want a community manager? They're like, I don't know what that is. I don't know the difference. So there's still a sort of a lack of understanding in the whole research ecosystem. I think we work in this space and we work with specific people all the time, our universities or institutions and particular stakeholder, particular institutions that we've worked with before. But I think if you go out wider, I think there is a real lack of understanding of these roles or lack of advocating for them.
On the back of that, we have a question actually. What is the most unrecognized role in research?
I probably don't know because by definition, it's the one I don't know exists.
Most unrecognized role. I mean, it's impossible to answer, I think. So I've been working a lot with data stewards recently, and that's the role that is the most. I could talk to people about RSEs and they get it, and I talk to people about data stewards and they go, so it's like a data manager, and you're like, well, no, it's not quite. So it's a data scientist. Well, no, it's not. Then so there's a lot of confusion around that one. So I think data stewards is possibly there. Lots of them out there, like really important role, but not well understood.
Do we have any data stewards in the room? Yeah, we do.
I want to advocate for community managers because they're obviously the hidden enablers. So
I think that's the best we can do with that one.
That's fine. That's fine. So Another question is maybe going back to the idea of professionalism, that, you know, it has a lot of benefits, but also a lot of being sort of weaponized in various ways. It's a question here, and examples include to gatekeep access to the community, to silence criticism, to enforce norms, resist change, and how can we navigate that tension? As a question.
So I didn't catch the last bit. Could you just repeat that? Sorry.
So how do we navigate the tension of the benefits, but also some of the the way in which it's been weaponized is in this question here. And there are some additional comments there that one of the big strengths of the RC movement has been self-definition, especially for LOQR researchers and folks coming into the community, and it signals a rather welcome approach rather than excessively formal.
I guess that picks up on some of the stuff you were saying earlier, Emma, about competencies and the skills frameworks more than a standard you must meet, although you have certain situations where for regulatory reasons you do need the certification against the standard, you know, and the sort of the 5 safes framework for how you assess people. You're willing to let them loose on patient data and this kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's obviously certain professions, like a doctor, you would definitely want them to be accredited, you know, and so but there's many that aren't. So I think the key to it is to not require it in those places where it's not needed. It's a nice thing for people to, if they want to have it, they can become accredited as a data scientist or a data steward or something like that. But if all organizations then require that, that then becomes a barrier to people that can't get the accreditation for some reason.
I mean, I kind of hope. I mean, it's a valid concern, right? Universities have an amazing ability at taking a great idea and turning it crap, right? So it could be weaponized against us, this idea of professionalization and things like that. But I would hope not, right? And I think the way that we do it is we solve that problem in the way that we solve all other problems like this, which is kind of iteratively. So we try something out and we listen to the responses we're getting from the community that we're trying to impress. And that here is the university, like HR and middle management and all that. If we start seeing that there are chances of weaponization, then we do something about it. Because if it's easily weaponizable, then it's probably something that we've done wrong rather than just their interpretation. So I'm not that concerned about it. I could be kicking myself in a year's time, but hopefully it's not a big risk.
It also falls a lot on those of us that do get to make hiring decisions or contribute in that kind of process. How do we select people? We never look at just what certifications have you got. I mean, that might be a short circuit, but it's not a good way of hiring. You don't tend to get the best people if you just look at the paperwork. And so you're actually looking at what are they like as individuals, what skills have they got, what experience have they got in the round.
I will say I love the idea of a weaponized RSE. If we had a few more of them on the campaign, we'd actually get listened to a lot more.
Well, rather than a weaponized RSE, there's a question about how do you ensure that the RSE community supports and uplifts adjacent communities as relatively mature community and inspiration for other precarious roles. So really how, you know, the history of the RC career path and the role, how can that maybe provide a blueprint or a framework or some kind of guidance for other similar roles?
Yeah, and that's pretty much what we're doing with Discourse. The premise of the grant was written as the RSE community is really strong, albeit a lot of volunteer activity and limited funding. How do we bridge from that to related roles in order to learn from what's gone before and actually leverage that success to help others advance? I know quite a few people involved in similar projects. Step Up has pretty much the same kind of premise. So there's a lot of that activity going on, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Jonathan and I were last year at a technician commitment event doing talks about professionalization, and he gave a presentation that made me absolutely seethe with jealousy because ARC's doing an amazing job at I can't even remember how many. It's like too many for me to remember. Significant number of RSEs, but then you're bringing in data stewards and you're bringing in other roles as well. So they're literally using the RSE model to get recognition and secure places for other jobs. It's data stewards as well, but I can't remember who else
data
it was.
stewards, data scientists, research infrastructure developers, and PRISMs, so professional research investment and strategy managers, which can encompass, if you squint a bit, all the sort of community manager and that kind of role.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, yeah, I think a lot of people are copying what I would say you, Simon, have done in that you and others have done in the RSC space. But I do think there's like the other approach is the kind of top-down approach, which is what the technicians have taken, the technicians' commitment. They really went for the university, the institutions, they went for the funders. They've also been extremely successful. So I think we need to look at both models and kind of decide like which is it, or do we tackle it from both sides, or which is it the ground up or the top down model that's going to work best for your sort of movement, really, your sort of role.
Yeah, and there are other sort of national initiatives and working groups that people can get involved with and use our privileged position, if you like. So there's one on precarity at the moment that's going on and things like that.
And I think naturally we work together quite well, because I think if you've done decades of work, of unrecognized work, chipping away at an academic system that doesn't recognize your work, it doesn't allow you career progression and stuff, you get quite a collaborative sort of approach to things. So you do actually, we've always, with RSE, we had people coming in and saying, how did you do it? What changes were made, and how did you get the community together and stuff? And we always sort of shared that information, because we saw it was good for the communities that were around, that were asking for that information, but it was good for us as well, because the more of these roles that get support and the more of the growth of these communities, then it benefits everybody. So I think we are deeply collaborative, both from our experience and also even selfishly, it helps us if we are.
Yeah, before we go to the final question, I just wanted to, Johnson's been very modest, but I want to explicitly plug the next round of the discourse grant funding. So the second round is open and closes on the 5th of June. So if you want to know any more about that, go to the discourse website, go talk to Johnson. But I wanted to end today with a question about now I can't find it anymore, but it was basically what thing that you did during your professional career that wasn't part of your main role did you actually benefit the most from?
Oh gosh.
This is when we go, Emma, what do you think?
Don't come to me, I can't think of anything. Something that I've done that's part of I need to think.
So the thing that absolutely benefited like me and my work and the way that things that have happened from what I've done over the years is that to trust that community that's around you. So if you want something to change and then you find a bunch of people who are really passionate and that kind of like shiny-eyed evangelist passionate about things, then trust them, because good things tend to happen when you work in a group with that sort of shared passion. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah, just to clarify, it was about the skill experience that you gained from outside your professional career you found most useful in your professional career.
You have to do it for you. You were making it harder. Okay, from our side.
I've got one. So do I go?
Go
So
for it.
I think mine is being a parent, because actually, I've had to become a very good juggler of everything. And actually, that really does relate to my role as a community manager, because I think that is the super skill of a community manager, is being able to like juggle all of the plates all of the time and actually not really procrastinate about anything, just kind of get on and do all, keep moving those spinning plates. And so I think the skill of that multitasking from being a parent, I think, is really, really helpful. Jonathan.
Yeah. Parenthood certainly helps. I think, it's in some ways it's hard to separate out what have you learned from your professional career, what have you learned outside work. In some degree, I make sure there's a strict separation between the two, but also a lot of things kind of blur the lines between the two. And so it's probably hard to know where I've learned particular things because they've kind of been learned in both settings. So, I do a lot of chairing meetings and group discussions and things, and I do that in work a lot. And I also do it outside work in a church context, leading Bible studies and so on. Which one did I first learn it in? I'm not entirely sure.
That is difficult, actually. So I have a very clear demarcation in my mind of stuff I've learned outside work and stuff I've learned inside work. No. So I definitely take the parenting point. That's it's certainly useful to be able to operate on no sleep when covered in vomit. I'm actually going to go back to my original point because I'm going to say prior to being whatever it is I am now, I was a researcher, right? And researchers don't tend to trust the people the other groups around that they're working with and stuff, and everything's kind of very insular, and it's kind of like what I used to call like pointy-elbowed academics, who just kind of like they get a territory and they protect it and they don't want anybody else to get on it. Whereas our community is very collaborative and open, and I would argue that being collaborative and open is far more effective and leads to greater successes than that sort of sitting on a territory and not letting anybody get it. And it was outside my work, my professional context.
Well,
I've just changed the world to meet my answer.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Please round of applause for our fireside chat. And that, signing up to 2030.